welcome to our After Hours edition of What the Flock. So excited. Can you guys see me?
Yes. Can we? Yeah, let's make sure we see you a little bit more.
I'm incognito. I had a long morning, Hoyt.
No, you don't want to.
This is on purpose. This is on purpose.
Well, anyway, can you believe we've gotten to the end of season 1?
No. It went like that.
It was crazy.
So
it was
fast.
Wonderful. I mean, I remember when this was just an idea, and to actually be able to say we've got a season finished and we can do another season coming up, and that people have been coming out and kind of supporting what we're doing. I mean, it's been a dream come true.
Really supporting what we're doing.
Yeah. And it's been great to do it as a team.
I know.
I've been really
my brother from another mother.
That's right. So it's been nothing but pleasure. So I'm looking forward to what's next, and I gotta believe the best is yet to come.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and this is what we wanted to do is recap season 1.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be amazing, but I don't think, which I love, I didn't anticipate how much great feedback we were going to get and how much people were sharing about how it helped them.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be cool for us to do a recap.
I love that idea.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you haven't done an After Hours episode with us
popping my cherry right now. I've got my glass of wine here for people who can't,
Did you hear what he said? He said he's popping his cherry on the After Hours episode.
That's right.
With a glass of wine. Cheers.
Cheers
To season 1.
Season 1.
And being able to share our stories and provide a safe place for people to share theirs.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
We welcome you guys to come on and tell your story. Yeah.
Please grab a glass of wine while you're listening and join us. I'm going to take a sip.
It's nice wine.
Awesome.
Okay. So we got to do our quote of the day.
Quote of the day, which I'm going to need my glasses for so I don't butcher the quote.
Yeah, you and me both.
Okay. So as usual, yes, we will start with our quote of the day. Shame shifting is where a survivor of abuse is deemed to be the problem for not forgiving the abuser. This further emotional and psychological abuse. Ignore such people. That's by Lily Hope Lusario.
Yeah. And listen, I think that happens all the time. And I experience it very much kind of as a defense mechanism from people.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they always realize what they're actually saying or what they mean when they say something like that. I mean, the way I try to convey it to people would be like if I had felt comfortable enough that we were having a conversation where I had said to you, or a person, when I was 21,
right.
I was raped, and then the person looks back at you and goes, "So what were you wearing that night?" Mm-hmm. And you're like, "Wait a second,
right?"
What? I mean, so I think that's a great analogy in the sense of no one wants to get raped. No one wants to join a cult. No one wants to get into a situation where they're incredibly abused and confused and hurt and damaged. But to take the point of view that somehow you brought it on yourself is really destructive.
Right.
And it doesn't foster any kind of real conversation. So I think it's very much what we're trying to do here with the show is to basically say, listen, we've all been through something like this.
Right.
And the important thing to acknowledge is the only way to really heal from it is to talk about it. So if you don't feel safe to talk about it because someone's basically judging you or shaming you that you even got yourself in that situation, then it's really counterproductive. So we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to
be the antithesis of shame shifting.
That's right.
And to take that even a step further, back to that quote, expecting the person abused to forgive the abuser. That is a personal choice.
That is a choice.
And forgiveness has a lot of different definitions in a lot of different scenarios, right? The ultimate term for forgiveness is basically understanding that if you continue in the hatred, you're only further harming yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I get that.
No, totally. I mean, I think back on, like, my mother and I had a complicated relationship. You know, she was quite a strong personality, and she kind of had a narcissistic tendencies, and it was kind of like her way or the highway. So there was a lot of times we had conflict, and a lot of times I felt hurt. A lot of times I felt like I wasn't being seen or heard. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, when I got older and I started to realize that, being a storyteller myself, that ultimately every story only makes sense when you understand the backstory.
Right.
So I think what the problem we make a lot of times with our relationships, and certainly with our parents, we just focus on the time when we arrived and going forward.
Right.
And you might have had all these interactions with your parents, and they said things or did things, or they didn't do things you wanted, or whatever, all that mess that happens growing up. But you never go, well, wait a second, where is this behavior that constantly makes me crazy and deal with my parents? Where does it come from? What was their backstory? What was happening to them before I arrived?
Right.
And until you do that, a lot of the behavior has no explanation. So you just get really resentful and frustrated, and you get depressed or experience despair or hurt. But if you actually do the homework and you figure out
right
what, I like to look at it as we kind of enter the world with this full toolbox. And we're ready to go out and deal with everything that happens. And then crises occur or interactions of some great scale. And you have to whip out a tool. And sometimes you might have to use this tool to basically survive and lose the tool in the process. But you keep moving forward, as we all do. And by the time you've gotten married and maybe start having kids, you've dropped a few tools along the way just to get through life. And then your kid, like me, might be saying, well, right now, I really want the saw. And you might have lost the saw way back when. And you're like, well, I can't really use the saw, but I can use the file. Mm-hmm. And it's like, the kids say, well, no, I don't want the file. I want the saw. And you have this absolute conflict, not realizing that it's not that your parent doesn't want to give you the file.
Right.
The saw, they just don't have it. So they're giving you the file. And until you do that homework, you just hold all this resentment.
Right.
And you don't realize that actually when you go back and find out the real truth, they lost the saw way back when that thing happened to them. And actually they were right. The next closest thing was the file, and they were actually doing their best.
Right.
And that's when I started to let go of all that kind of resentment I had from my parents maybe not doing things exactly the way I wanted with my limited point of view. And I think that's a really important thing to look at these stories, is that until you start to understand the full story, the context, what things led up to it, what the backstory is, mm-hmm. not a lot makes sense.
Right. Well, interestingly enough, have that conversation with one of my sons.
Okay,
recently,
good.
Where I was trying to explain to my youngest son where some of my triggers come from. Mm. And so he had said something to me that in his mind didn't really mean much,
right.
But to me, it triggered me.
Yeah.
And he's like, whoa,
where is this coming from? Yeah.
So I stopped what I was doing and I said, let's sit down and let's chat.
Right.
And I had to walk him through what had happened in my life in the past in the cult.
Right.
Of when everything I did was not good enough.
Right.
Nothing was good enough. I'd be like, well, how about this? Well, how about this?
Right,
well, how about this?
Yeah,
and it was
right.
never good enough, right? And
I'm very familiar with that feeling. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
right. It's just never, it's always a carrot in front of your nose.
Right.
You can be better, you can do better, you can
Absolutely,
do better.
Sure.
So my son was proposing something to me, and every solution I had wasn't good enough for him. And I started to cry. And
Yeah.
he's like, what's happening with you?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's go to the backstory.
Yeah.
And I walked him through the whole thing, and it was pretty beautiful because he's like, wow, I get that. I get that. Thank you for sharing that. Like, he didn't know.
Well, that's so beautiful because, you have those tools now. But
right.
but by saying it, that's what's so wonderful, because a lot of people, like my mother, obviously, whenever I would have those conflicts, she was reacting out of wounds that she had probably fully not healed from and just only knew
or wasn't
this
aware
way.
of.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so when you're at a place like you have, because you've done some work and you've actually started to realize that you went through some abuse and you've got these kind of traumas that you're working through, then you can have these kind of conversations, and it completely changes the landscape.
Right.
And the empathy that comes from your son to go, oh, now I get it. Like, now I see how my words could be affecting you and being heard in a perspective I would never know if I didn't know the story.
Right.
And that's why I think stories are so important, because until we tell our stories, no one really knows what makes us tick.
Right.
You know, and we get in real hot water when we just project on others and make the assumption that they're wired like we are. Because that's just not the way it is. I mean, I'm going through this process of not only of looking at my own experiences I do, depending on, what triggers whatever day, but trying to figure out how to tell this story to others. And it's very interesting when I think our group was not very large, and yet, like a family, everyone has their own experience. No one had the same experience I had, and I don't expect that for them to necessarily understand all the things that I experienced. Likewise, I don't expect them to have that same experience, and I expect to learn from them what their perspective was. But there's got to be that understanding and that kind of agreement that we're at least going to talk about it.
Are willing to consider where the other person's coming from. There's a willingness.
And a willingness to accept it wasn't necessarily the way you thought of it all the time. Because that's right. The cultic thinking is always like we all have to be on the same page. We all have to agree to this 100%. Either you are part of the problem or you're part of the solution.
Right.
And it's that kind of black and white, binary, all or nothing. Thinking is so destructive, and we see it everywhere in the world.
Right.
And that's why even like when you're dealing with your son and you're able to reframe something, say, hey, listen, I'm having this reaction based on some experiences I had in the past, which were painful. And those words, even though I'm sure you didn't mean them that way, this is what I hear. I love what Brene Brown said in one of her books, that, the best way to communicate with someone, because she was referencing a conversation you had with her husband. Mm-hmm. You can have this, when you feel like you know someone well, you can fall into the trap of thinking, oh, when they say this or when they do this, this is what's going on in their head.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what she was saying in that book, which I love so much, I think it was Dare to Be Brave or something like that.
One of her great books.
Yeah, one of her great. She's amazing. But you're basically saying the way to frame that, if you're having a freak out and you're kind of projecting what you think is going on, but you actually haven't had the conversation yet, the worst thing you can do is start accusing this person from the point of view, like, I can't believe you're doing this because this means you're doing that, and this is what you're thinking about us. And like that gets you nowhere.
Right.
But if you come from a place of vulnerability and say, hey, I'm noticing something's going on. We've had these interactions. It's making me feel really uncomfortable. And the story I have going on in my head is this.
Right.
So you're taking ownership of the story.
Right.
You're not saying definitively this is what's going on, but you're allowing the person.
Here's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, this is what you're allowing the person to respond, and they can go, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we should talk about this. Or it's like, no, that's not at all what's going on, which was in the book, that was exactly the case. It was her husband was going through something completely unrelated to that had shut him down in such a way. She was taking his inability to converse in these moments as something that he didn't want to be with her, or she had kind of blown it into a whole nother arena. And he's like, no, I've been having my own little nightmare here on my side. I just didn't want to deal with it. I was trying not to trouble you with it.
Yeah.
And it's just this massive miscommunication. So, but it's that way of learning how to talk to each other where you're not attacking, you're not projecting, you're not making judgments. You're just fostering an opportunity to get, on the playing field and let's talk about what's happening.
Right. Well, with my son, what I loved was seeing him kind of have his own aha moment of a backstory.
Right.
Like, you don't know what's going on with someone. Like, so you might think someone cuts you off on the freeway, or they've done this or they've that. You don't know what just happened in their life.
No.
And not that you're making excuses for them.
No.
But there's just a humanity to it of you don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know.
When that happens, I always try to say, thank you for reminding me how I don't want to behave on the road.
Right.
Which is, and again, I mean, not every time. Sometimes they get angry, but, it's like, I think it is. It's always that type of thing of, like you're saying, you just don't know, right? You don't know. And to immediately jump to the conclusion, which, listen, we do all the time. So it's not like it's something that can.
It's human nature.
Yeah. But the more that we can kind of go, wait, let me have the reaction, but not per se react on it. It's like, let me have the feeling, but I don't have to necessarily take an action based on that feeling. Let me first analyze and try to look at this feeling and say, where can I possibly frame it where I don't feel so reactive?
Correct.
Because I think that's when we always get ourselves in trouble, when we feel like oh, there's only one way to respond to this. No, we always have options. Always
Right.
have. I'm a big believer in options.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, so let me circle back to the quote for a second. Because this recently, and probably why this quote really spoke to me, because this recently happened to me, where I was communicating with someone from my old cult about some things, some ongoing things that were going on with my ex-husband, who's the father of my kids.
Right.
So unfortunately, or fortunately for further growth on my part, right?
That's right.
I am in a position where I still occasionally have to communicate with him. So I had reached out to his leader in the group that he's now in another state. And it's someone that I know very well because I actually used to lead a campus group in the cult with this human. Okay. So I know him well enough to know that at the depths of his soul, I feel like he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like I never questioned his humanity or if he truly loved people. I think he's still very indoctrinated.
Sure.
And that's, fair for me to say. But as far as his motives, he got into this cult for the same reasons I did.
Yeah.
I wanted to help people. I wanted to save the world. I felt like the Bible was speaking to me.
Yeah.
Like all those things, right?
Well, and this goes back to that whole idea that we talk about a lot, that what these groups do is they weaponize your noble inclinations.
Correct. Then exploit them.
Against yourself,
Right.
So your desire to do all those great things is exactly how they're working you.
And he was one of those guys.
Yeah.
Very noble human, in my opinion, right? So I reached out to him thinking, well, maybe I'll make some traction because he knows me from 20 years ago.
Right.
He knows how I moved through life then, right? That I would stay up all night to finish a task. I would take a bullet for people.
Right.
That's how I was in this cult. So I reached out to him about some very clear issues with my ex, right? That had to deal with some very dishonest things, some very narcissistic things, money he owes, things that I have documents and facts for.
Right.
That I'm like, okay, I'm trying to keep us out of court.
Right.
I don't want that emotional, warfare.
Right.
I'm willing to bend. I'm willing to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I just need him to acknowledge some things, right? So we can move forward and try to forge some kind of peace.
Right.
Or try to forge something I can stomach. Right? Like, I'm just trying to find a palatable place.
Right.
And
like
so
a common ground where we can at least
where I don't like you, you don't like me, but let's just move on.
Right.
Right? So, one of the last comments that he made to me was very blankety, meaning of the situation. He said, well, until you're really willing to forgive your ex, I can't really help you. Because the Bible says you need to forgive. And I'm thinking, so I'm being asked to forgive someone who on a monthly basis recommits the same crime.
Right.
Right? Because there's monthly dues, there's monthly interest that he owes. So I can see if it's an old crime,
right,
where we've all moved on, we all make mistakes, we all evolve, we all learn, we all grow. But when it's every damn month,
it's current,
and it's the same,
and it's
not my fault, too bad for you, then it's harder to stomach, right? So I'm asking this leader of a sizable church. He's not just a member; he's the leader. Can you sit down with us?
Right.
I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to be persuaded. I'm willing to do it on your turf with a Bible.
Right.
I'll bring my documents. Please help me see the error of my ways. Of why this is okay.
And where I should be forgiving.
Where I should be forgiving.
Yeah.
No response after that.
It's just, I'm not surprised about that at all. No.
I'm not surprised, but I was really disappointed because I had been kind of preaching his, this is a good guy. And I still think he's a good guy. But so let me finish here. So I just felt like, where do I go with that? Right? In the sense of, but I'm still being asked to forgive if it's a spiritual virtue I'm missing.
Right.
Well, if you were just more forgiving, this wouldn't be a problem.
Well,
so I'm supposed to throw all the facts out the window.
This is what I would how I would respond to that is I think I've learned something in life that's helped me in the sense of don't react to like input or a message before I weigh into the equation the messenger and what I feel about them.
Correct.
So if I feel like in this case, this person is indoctrinated,
Yes.
is operating under a large degree of influence, then more than likely I am not experiencing the authentic person.
Correct.
And therefore the words coming out of their mouth most likely are not also genuine.
Correct.
So from that point of view, do I really need to take those words at face value? Or should I always couch them with the understanding that this person's probably not being very successful at dealing really with their own current situation?
Or going to hear me.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
Well, even if he heard you, can he process it in the perspective of the validity of your point would force him to acknowledge the invalidity of his stance.
There
and
you go.
that's
Ding,
where
ding,
the
ding,
where
ding,
the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah.
And so from that point of view, you realize he can't hear you.
He can't.
You know, because he would have to reevaluate and look at his whole life in a whole different way. And that's a lot of the experience, I'm having trying to reconnect with some of the ex-members from my group who are still heavily indoctrinated. I get it. I mean, it's tragic. But when you think about that you have to go back to, and when some of my people in my group were talking 30, maybe in 40 years, you have to go back multiple decades to a moment when you started interacting with either the cult leader or the group on some level.
Yeah.
And at that moment, you were starting to get influenced, manipulated, conned, worked, whatever way you want to frame it. You were getting, taken.
Yeah.
And so first it takes humility to admit that to yourself, which you would think wouldn't be such an obstacle when you consider we all get manipulated every day one way or another. But
sure.
When you happen to go back that far and you have to admit that to yourself and then start the work of looking forward at your life, going through those decades with this new lens
Right.
and this new way to frame things and say, okay, starting at that point in my life, I was being influenced, I was being worked, and that I now have to play that into every experience I went going forward. Most people are like, nope, can't deal with that.
Can't do it.
Yeah. So
Can't do it.
So it's I think to me it's the most tragic part of the whole cultic relationship thing. The struggle to A, admit to the trauma, B, admit to the manipulation and conning or whatever way you want to frame it, the influence that happened and that you in essence got taken. That's hard to do. So people, I think the line of least resistance is to avoid or deny or just hold some position of delusion.
Right.
That it's just, it's another step on my spiritual path. Well, yes, that's true from a certain point of view, but also let's acknowledge what really happened. And that's where I think people have a hard time really acknowledging that.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you.
So that guy's in the leadership position. He's supposed to influence all these, but reinforce their faith. And for him to admit his faith would be shaken if he admitted the validity of your point, not likely to happen.
Right. And then that's usually backed up from several members of the group with, well, here's what Jesus says here.
Yeah.
Here's what Jesus says here. Yeah, but Jesus also talks about quite a few other things, as far as stealing and lying and all these other things. But those comments and messages that I sent them are, to your point, never acknowledged or responded to.
Yeah.
Right? So they can't, it's like a force field. They can't hear that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when I talked recently to a guy I knew in the group, I hadn't seen him in 20 years. And he holds this guy, our leader, in this perception that he was an incarnation of God and the self-realized man and all that. And so I said, listen, we can at least agree to disagree that I don't hold that perspective. I respect whatever perspective you have. You had your own experience. But can we at least admit that he had certain characteristics, and one of them was that he was very deceptive? And he's like, well, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, let's see. He lied about
let me count the ways.
His whole background, his upbringing. He lied about his name. He lied about his sexual activity. He lied about his drug use.
And you're talking about
Freddie Von Meers from Eternal Values. So, and then he lied about, getting AIDS. And we were some of the people who were actually acting as nurses and taking care of him when he was not. We didn't know he was dying at the time, but he was. And literally, he had like a bed sore, and we were changing bandages.
Wow.
Because it's this open sore.
Yeah.
And if you had a little cut in your finger or something, you could have really gotten HIV from this person. And so that's a pretty deceptive track record.
Yeah.
And his response was, well, he was just in a body, he was only human. I'm like, dude, there's plenty of people that are in bodies and human that do not behave like that, and certainly don't call themselves spiritual leaders. I said, I think we're going to just have to.
Yeah, being human doesn't negate being honest.
Well, also, being human doesn't mean you don't take responsibility for what you do. Like, listen, I can say, yeah, I was under the influence. I was brainwashed. It's like being an alcoholic and I drive and maybe kill someone. Now, I can say I was drunk.
Yeah.
But that doesn't let me off the hook. I still killed someone.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the challenges of these experiences is it is hard to admit that you did things that you regret, that you did things that or said things that you wish you hadn't said. But the truth is, yes, there is a victimization of the fact that, I was influenced, I was brainwashed, whatever way you want to kind of talk about it. But ultimately, you're still responsible. And the hard part is getting to a place of going, okay, yes, I did do those things. I did say those things. Or the ones that I talked to you earlier about, the stuff that I wish I had said, or situations I wish I had interfered and I remained silent and I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Those are things that are really, really hard for me. But the truth is you only start to process them and you only start to feel at all comfortable with them is to talk about them. And that's where, the shows like what we're doing is all about, because if the talking doesn't happen, how can anything heal?
Yeah, I think that is the most perfect segue ever. It's almost like I'm paying you, but I'm not. That is the perfect.
Oh, here we are.
I should pay you. The perfect segue for what we're going to talk about next.
Oh, let's talk.
Right?
What are we talking about next?
We're talking about next what we talked about on the phone.
Oh.
When are you ready
to
tell your story?
I love this
When
topic.
are cult survivors, and we'll say any abuse survivors, but for our conversation, let's stick to cult survivors.
Yeah.
When are people that have been indoctrinated in any sort of cultic relationship, are cult survivors ready to tell their story to where it is a helpful experience for them?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. And I would frame it first from the overarching point of view. If you haven't arrived to a place where you, in essence, feel this is kind of a badge of honor or a demonstration of your courage, and in the sense that you found yourself in a situation you never imagined you'd ever get yourself.
That you didn't sign up for.
You didn't sign up for. But you also found your way out of it.
Correct.
You found a way to make sense of it and heal. And you found a way to communicate it on such a level where like your friends and family around you are kind of like, dude, what the hell happened? And you've had some conversations and and now you feel this urge to share this journey because you're basically feeling, wow, if I can go through this and I can learn from this, I certainly hope and pray that others who are in like situations can see just by the journey I've gone on that they could do it too, because I would have never believed I could have gotten to where I've arrived. And now I feel this almost urge to kind of share my story because it feels almost like for me, a duty to kind of, it's like I survived something. I learned from it.
Mission.
I got some silver lining from this and some life lessons which are priceless. Then what am I supposed to just keep them to myself? Mm-hmm. No, I mean, though, I think the whole reason we get involved with these relationships, whether they're one-on-one or a group, we're trying to create a better version of ourselves on some level. We're hoping this relationship, this group will help facilitate us growing, evolving, becoming a better version. Mm-hmm. And if the process of realizing it wasn't that, but understanding the dynamics at play and how we got there, and how we can get out and learn and grow and actually have have the very thing we were hoping for, then you want to tell the story.
Right.
That's a great story.
Well, say your statement again that you shared with me on the other day about silence.
Well, for me, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, when I think back on my cultic experience and the obvious regrets are the things like I said or did, especially to my friends and family that were just hurtful. Mm-hmm. But the things that sit with me more uncomfortably are more the interactions that I watched behave in my group dynamic, where I saw really bad things happening that I remained silent, or I saw activities going on, or someone getting their ass handed to them screaming or whatever, and I didn't in any way stop it or interfere or voice anything. So for me, that feeling of remaining silent really sits uncomfortably with me. And I've taken the point of view of saying, if I've learned nothing in this entire journey, the one constant is that if nobody talks, nothing changes. Mm-hmm. But if you open your mouth and you start to reflect and you start to share these experiences you have, there's a chance you're passing on information that someone else, for whatever reason, might find it resonates with them. They might choose to assimilate it in some way.
Or find the strength.
And within that, taking in that information, they may now have more in their kind of reservoir that when they face situations like I face, they might be able to choose a healthier option than I was able to choose because I didn't have that information.
Right.
So that's where the sharing of information and the opportunity to maybe frame it differently, put your own spin on it, kind of make it maybe a little more user-friendly, a little more relatable. Mm-hmm.
Package it up.
That's the beauty of telling these stories, because there's no one way, there's no formula, there's no right way to do anything. But if we find people that we resonate with, and the way we usually do that is through hearing their stories and going like, oh, I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That reminds me of my relationship with my dad, or that reminds me of my relationship with my girlfriend, or my boss, or my coach back in high school. I mean, we all have these points where we kind of dovetail together, and you feel seen and heard because there's this connection. It's like, oh, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
I've had that feeling. I've felt that way. And I think that's where, things, that are quite magical can happen, because that's where we start to learn and grow and empower one another.
Well, the way you packaged it earlier, you said, if you stay silent, nothing can change. If you tell your story, something might possibly change. And I just loved that, because it's that juxtaposition of nothing or maybe something.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Listen, Michael Jordan said it, right? You miss 100% of the baskets you never, shots you never take. Yeah. You got to take your shot. So and having been, in this history of choosing silence, now I'm like, no.
Yeah, done.
I'm going the other way now. I'm going to talk.
Done.
I'm going to talk, and people may get tired of me talking, and that's certainly within anyone's point of view. But I'm going to continue to talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And in my world, you're ready to tell your story, like you said, when you've crossed to the other side, when you've made it to the other side, and you're like, God damn it, I went through a lot.
Yeah.
I'm stronger than I thought.
Yeah.
Look at what I've learned. Look at what I've gained. I wear it like a badge of honor. Mm-hmm. When you feel like and understand that you are stronger than you thought you were, and that you've made it through something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
Sure.
Then it is that I don't want to say accomplishment, that's not the right word, but that making it to the other side, that badge of honor, that journey that you took, that you didn't allow to kill you or take you out or make you quit on life, right? But to come back stronger, to come back renewed, to come back with, here's how I'm going to tackle my life going forward. Here's what I've learned. Then you're ready. Then it's inspiring.
Yeah, and I think the one of the most obvious ways about that is to know that it's your choice to tell the story rather than someone convincing you to tell your story. Like, I think when you're taking an active posture, saying, "Listen, I think there's some value in sharing this information I've learned, so I'm going to actively pursue avenues where I can maybe find a platform where I can share these things."
But even deeper, sorry to interrupt you, it's the intention behind that. It's about the intention. Because when the intention is to help other people,
well, that exactly
versus let me fix my own reputation.
Yeah,
there's a difference.
It's a huge difference. Because the reputation things or the defensiveness, that's all very ego-based stuff.
Correct.
But listen, we all battle that. But ultimately, these personal journeys aren't about coming out ahead. It's really about recognizing, boy.
It's about coming out at all.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it really is. I mean, I was at a film festival recently, and there was a short film, or I think a doc about some heavy trauma. I think it was about Vietnam or one of these things, and someone in the audience was talking about their trauma, and they were just saying a statement which I loved. It said, when it comes to trauma, it's not something you ever get over. It's something you get through. And I think that's the way you have to look at it. You don't want to imagine you're going to come to this experience, you're going to finally figure it out, and you're almost going to be vindicated, and you can erase the fact you even went through it. Right. That's not the way it works.
Well, there's no finish line tape.
There isn't.
You're not breaking through the tape at the end of the marathon.
Exactly. Because, I mean, just like I look at this season and how much I've learned from every person's story who's talked, and hearing their perspective and what experiences they had. And yes, of course, certain aspects of it resonate with me, but then there's always a new twist. And then it's the way they've processed it and the way they've framed it and talked about it. And it's made me reflect and go, oh, there was a couple instances in my history where I think about, oh, that's actually feels like a better way for me to look on that experience than even I've tried to frame it. So it's this ongoing evolution,
evolving.
And it's kind of the way I look at our society right now, which has become so cultish, and people end up, usually gravitating towards extremism.
Yeah.
I was having a talk with John Atack, who we're going to have on the show.
Yeah.
And and this whole idea of when you arrive to a narrative that you've settled in this false belief that this is the answer, like this is how it works, this is it.
This is how life works.
Now I get what there's it feels good on a certain level because you have certainty, right? But certainty is such a trap, because certainty is actually just a feeling. It's not
it's momentary.
It's not a mental process that's come through a lot of assimilation of actual facts. It's a feeling you get, just like frustration, anger, love, hatred. It's a feeling. So this idea of arriving to a point of certainty or a single narrative, what that means is you stop taking in information.
Right.
And that is when you are in the most vulnerable position, and that is when you get manipulated.
That's when you're in trouble.
And that's when you get in real hot water.
Yeah. Agreed.
So you can always lean certain ways, but if you can't stay on that spectrum of shades of gray and say, okay, I lean heavily this direction, but you're still in the mindset but I'm still welcome to be wrong, welcome to hear new information, and maybe move on this spectrum. But once you've arrived to oh, no, this is the way it is, danger zone, danger, Will Robinson.
It's almost like, I call it a live, L-I-V-E, a live agreement with life. Like, I have a couple business agreements where we know we haven't figured it all out yet, so we call it a live agreement, meaning it's ongoing.
Yeah.
The discussion is ongoing. We're still figuring it out. We call it good faith discussions.
Yeah.
And I kind of look like at all information that I take in now, it's like a live agreement with life. The discussion is ongoing.
Well, it's like that, what they say, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So if you're an organism, either you're growing or you're contracting. So it's not like you ever stay put. So one of those two forces are at work.
Correct.
So obviously, I think most of us would like to continue growing.
Yeah.
And that means you have to keep taking in information. You have
to be willing to evolve.
Yeah.
And like you just said, life is about evolution. Every single second we're evolving.
Yeah.
And when we cap that off, I think we're in trouble.
Well, and again, it's kind of falling into that trap of acquiring things where you think you've arrived to a place of knowingness and thinking, oh, that's getting me closer to this other place I'm seeking where I'm going to have it all figured out and I'll know what's right. And that is such a trap because...
It's a trap.
Because first of all, I mean...
It's a trap. Don't do it.
Well, it doesn't exist. Like,
doesn't exist.
anyone who's even trying to embody that, gets under the label of the know-it-all. And I certainly I don't know anyone who likes the know-it-all.
No.
I certainly do not like those. And if I felt that someone thought I was that, I would be horrified.
Yeah.
The people that I consider to be the most kind of genuine and open-minded and just smart are the ones that are the quickest ones to say, that's a great point. I haven't thought about that. I don't know. Let me think about
that. Yeah.
If you're quick to say, I don't know, to me, that means you're probably one of the brighter ones. When you're so quick to answer and feel like you have to have a solution all the time, which is a very male thing. Guys, we always want to like, oh, let me think about this. I'll give you the answer. It's a real struggle to kind of go, hey, I need to think about it a little bit more. It's a good point.
Let me take that in.
Yeah.
Let me consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that is definitely an evolved human. Like, I trust those people more than anybody else.
Well, I mean, I just think it's a good way to guard yourself. Watch behavior, watch how people frame things. And you want to surround yourself with the people that you feel are going to be respectful and open-minded and kind of see and hear you without all these judgments. And people kind of reveal themselves. And I think it's very...
How they respond.
Yeah, and the hard thing to do is to pay attention. We want to keep, I know for me, I always love to look at give someone the benefit of the doubt and look at the good side. And I see certain traits in them that I think are wonderful. But I've had to learn, taking the whole package and watch all the things they're putting out.
Yeah.
And watch because I've been taken in a few times by people I thought were actually working in my corner and turned out not to be. So, you just have to kind of pay attention when people show you who they are.
Believe them.
Yeah, believe them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Hoyt.
Are we going to do these questions?
We're going to do these questions.
All right, great.
Okay, so we have what I did.
From the audience, right?
From the audience, from people commenting, emailing, YouTube comments, all sorts of things, which we love, by the way.
Loving your TikToks, those sort of people, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? You'll see on the questions I'm going to ask you. That's a TikTok question.
Oh, good.
So hold up on that TikTok comment.
All right.
But I just wanted to thank everyone who has, tuned in or watched or listened, because it shows me that they're really getting it by the questions they ask or the comments. So what I did is I took 3 questions for you.
Okay.
3 questions for me that kind of enveloped the majority of the questions, because there were so many that I had to take the 3. I kind of looked at all of them and then took them together.
Distilled them down to like
exactly.
This, like,
I condensed.
Here's a theme that kind of came up a few times. So let me
3 themes for both of us.
Cool, great.
And you haven't seen the ones I'm asking you, which I love.
Okay.
Which I have to say, LA traffic. Hoyt got here right before we started, so either to his benefit or to his demise, he has not seen these questions.
No, I tell you,
which I love.
Keep it spontaneous.
It's definitely spontaneous.
Why not?
Okay, so how about you start?
Okay.
You've got my questions.
All right.
So you ask, these are questions for me from.
All right, from our wonderful audience. Seems like your, meaning Chele, journey through trauma recovery is a little bit more raw than Hoyt's. So we're on the raw meter here.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on why you think that is?
Well, yes, I can. Mostly because I've already seen that question.
Okay, well,
obviously.
good. I'm very, very keen to hear your answer.
Well, I think the obvious part of that, which is what most listeners have kind of weighed in on, not all of them, but some, so I thought it was great to bring it up. Hoyt's cult died out how many years ago? Would you say?
20 years ago now.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
So Hoyt's experience is different than mine because his group has ceased to exist.
Yeah.
So it's a different dynamic for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm still getting, like I referenced the conversation with the leader from the church that is still asking me to forgive my abuser.
Right.
So things that happen in my life are current, right? They're in real time. They're triggering me in real time. I wish they didn't still trigger me. I think I get better and better at it. It gets less and less. Like, you'd be very proud of me. I did not respond to the "you must forgive your abuser." I thought, you know what? I know better than that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to respond. So that was a huge growth for me.
That's great.
Because at first I was like, well, let me tell you. And I started typing, and then I deleted it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Right? He can't hear me. So I think the main difference for you and I, well, there's two, but I think the main one is yours has ceased to exist, although the memories, the experiences, the people are real. And I know you're working on a docuseries, so it's, in real time bringing things up for you, right? And it's always going to live in your cells and live in your body and live in your memories. But for me, kind of the nagging real lifeness of it is current.
Well, I mean, listen, if my group was still going, it would grate at me every day. No, because obviously you have a front row seat, first, hand knowledge of what all those people are still going through right now as we're talking.
Right.
They're experiencing those same traumatic events that are happening potentially right at this moment. And that's just heartbreaking.
Oh, and I have to tell you, not so much right at this moment, one of the main leaders of this group who has a PhD in Bible studies, air quotes, for anyone who's only listening and not watching, on somewhat of a reaction of our podcast saying...
Oh, good. We're making some waves.
Right?
Like it,
saying why their group, the ICOC, is not a cult. And they took it down. I would tell you all to go watch it because it was quite fascinating to watch them hit every single point about why they're not a cult, which only further confirmed that they were a cult, right? And all the comments were like, dude, you just confirmed that you are a cult, But I thought it was interesting because the title of it was, What is a Cult?
Yeah.
Right? Defending themselves. About why they're not. So... yeah, that stuff's still happening real time for me.
I mean, that's that. So I think that it's very hard to live with. Like, I think on some level, the fact that my cult leader died. The group. When I sued them, basically fractured and split, and there weren't that many left anyway. We were a much smaller group.
Would you say you sued them?
I sued them. Yeah, I took them down.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
What?
So I was able to also go through that reaction that a lot of people feel like, oh, I wish I could stop this from happening. So because our group was small enough, I was able to kind of experience that, which was incredibly healing. And that's why I could move more into my own personal kind of recovery path, because I didn't feel this obligation to kind of take down the group, which I can understand, like, Leah Remini with Scientology.
Yeah.
I think she's had a difficult time balancing between her own healing process versus wanting to stop those fuckers in that cult that she was in. So
or feeling that kind of responsibility probably as a public voice.
So it's a very when the group's still going on, it's a very, very different scenario, and that would certainly explain some rawness going on.
Some real time rawness. Yeah, exactly. Well. And I think it's kind of cool what most people are commenting on. So thank you for everyone who's commented on this, by the way. I like the fact that they like our dynamic. It's definitely a brother-sister kind of thing going on. But your experience and your timeline is different than mine.
Of course.
So I like having that kind of yin and yang of trauma recovery.
Right?
Yeah. Like you were out sooner than me. I'm fresher out than you. I mean, it's been 12 years, but it's still a different process. So I like providing that for people. That, like you've said, like I've said, there is no one size fits all to trauma recovery. No. Everyone's experience is different. It might be a small little yogi cult.
Also, you're always dealing to some inclusion, whatever trauma you went through in life before you even got involved with the cultic group.
Right.
So there's this whole trauma thing that goes on, just being in a body and having a family or whatever, that you've gone through. Everyone's got their own kind of experience and their own kind of chemical makeup. So there is no one size fits all. And it's just a matter of whether you're actively, trying to go after that and try to figure it out, or you're just avoiding, like what most people do. And again, I'm not making any judgments. It's just, it's hard work to kind of look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm going to knuckle down and try to get to the bottom of why I have these moments and reactions and things that I don't know where they're coming from, and I need to start to investigate. And that takes a certain person at a certain time in their life where they're ready to do it. And just hope that more and more people get there sooner than later.
Well, and I have to add on to that, and then I'm going to ask you a question. What I love about Nixie, remember Nixie, we've had on several episodes. So we're at Nixie's house. This is where we do our, thank you, Nixie.
Thank you.
Where we do our after hours episodes. Nixie, I basically had to bamboozle at first into even coming on an episode. That's when she had her hat on, right? But watching Nixie come alive and really own her story and be more and more comfortable with it. Yeah. I have to give her a special shout out because she's really seen the benefit and I think the evolution of that badge of honor that I made it through this. And then watching her new husband, who knew nothing about the cult, jump in and feel passionate about, wow, this happened to my wife. Yeah. Wow, this is fascinating. Let me learn about this. And become an advocate himself and to be sending me links and information. And I'm like, this is why we're doing what we're doing, right? We're educating people, but we're letting people know that it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to be human. It's okay
It's okay to have had a cultic relationship.
It's okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've all had them. That's one of our...
In one way or another.
Yeah, that's one of our recurring themes. It's not if, it's usually when.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's trying to reframe and figure out, like, okay, when did I have something that really kind of hit me hard and I haven't quite looked at it? Yeah. Okay, on to the question.
Your question. Okay. The first one's an easy one for you.
Okay.
Are you ever going to join Chele on TikTok?
Oh boy!
Hoyt.
It's funny. It's funny you bring it up because TikTok is still something I don't understand.
You don't need to. Okay, you just gotta show up.
But I've got a dear friend of mine who's an actor, who he was on High School Musical, and he played the coach.
Okay.
Bart Johnson. He's got a huge following on TikTok, which I have.
Look him up. I didn't know.
Up. He's got a huge following.
You say Bart Johnson?
Bart Johnson.
Okay. Hi, Bart.
And Bart's amazing. And he's done so well on it. He's actually talked about. He goes, I might take a break from acting and just do this because there's a ton of money in it too.
It's lucrative, dude.
And I still don't understand how that even happens. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I'm learning.
But he was saying, without telling me, what his situation was. He said a guy who has twice as many members as his is making like $1 million
followers,
$1.5 million a month.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that got my attention. and not that I'm
money talks.
Not that I'm pursuing that money is a goal, but I see money as freedom.
Well, it takes money to get through life.
Yeah. So I'm open to TikToking. And
I have some ideas.
And you have to. I ask. It will be a student-teacher relationship. Yeah. You can show me how it works because when I think of TikTok, I think of the younger generation and dancing.
Oh no!
And all that.
It's everybody.
So if it's become something else,
it's a whole world. Well, what I love about it is reaching people.
Right.
And so people have been doing videos of their story of cultic relationships and then sending them back to me.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my gosh. Like I'll show you all this. We will. We definitely will. Yeah. We absolutely will. But
because kudos to everyone who's doing
that. And just again, people saying, I've never talked about this before.
Oh, thank
or
goodness.
Your video inspired me to share this.
Right.
Or even
I love that.
ex-members from my group.
Yeah.
From all over the world. Reaching out. It's beautiful. So we're definitely going to pull you into a TikTok video.
Which is a nice segue into my next question for you.
Go for it.
So, Chele, what has the reaction been from your old cult to you speaking up?
Oh, the reaction from my old cult. Well, they have been making videos, right, to talk about how they're not a cult.
Right.
That's a big one. But I think...
Have they actually cited you in those videos, or?
Indirectly.
Okay.
Yeah, indirectly. Ex-members reaching out to me.
Right.
And we have some really... Because, again, my group was and is still large. So it got up to 150,000 around the world because it's international. But it's still at about... And no one really knows because they're so deceptive and shady with their numbers. Right. But it's anywhere between 100 and 120,000.
Wow.
But there's also that splinter group. So
where
Kit McKee
the leader went off and did his own.
Started a new group.
Right.
Because, the old ICOC wasn't radical enough for him anymore.
Right.
And they were all sinners now. So he started the ICC.
Right.
The International Christian Church. Which, again, no one really knows exactly how many members he has because I think he inflates them. But he did this really weird video at the end of the pandemic that talked about how people were giving their PPP money, their pandemic money.
To the church?
Their stimuluses.
Yeah.
To his group. And he was bragging about how they were getting $250,000 a week. A fucking week from these people that are trying to survive during COVID. And he's bragging. It's on video on YouTube. And I'm like, is this guy insane? The answer is yes. 2, posting this, he's proud of these people giving what they should be using on their families to the group for them to go start other churches around the world. That's where they say the money's going.
Right.
So apparently they're ramping up. They're starting other churches. And they think the ICOC, my cult, isn't as radical as they are. So it's like cult versus cult. It's like God Wars.
Yeah.
Cult versus cult, right?
Exactly.
So that's what he's doing. So, there has been a reaction. People have called Nixie.
Coming up on an hour. So
we're going to have to wrap it up. So I'm going to wrap it up. But, God, I could go on that topic forever.
So,
there has been a reaction.
A lot of interaction.
A lot of interaction.
I think there'll be more.
There will be more, as there should be, because that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
It's to have a voice.
Rattle the cage.
Oh, I don't mind. Bring it.
It's beautiful.
You can find me on www.bringit.com.
Exactly. Okay, next question.
Okay, your question. We'll do these last ones quick.
Yeah.
I think these... Okay, so Hoyt, you seem like more of the coach, and Chele seems like more of the student. Since you've been out so long, is it hard for you to go there emotionally and share details about your past?
Well, that's an interesting question because when I go, when I'm working on the project I'm currently working on, where they're asking me to go back to the mindset I had at that time, it is a struggle for me to sometimes go back to, because I've worked so hard to get out of it, and go to the place of using that as an example of why I needed to change and think differently. So to answer that question, it is, and I find when I talk about those times, I always want to couch it with like a statement that says, "Now I know this sounds crazy, but I used to think like this," and
right,
and which I think is helpful when you're in that kind of coaching mode. But if you're actually just trying to storytell, it's actually better to just go, "Well, this happened, and I thought this, and I thought that, and I thought that," and you take someone on the journey. You can get to the point where you kind of have the reflection. So it's a valid question and something that I continue to work on, and depending on the scenario and situation, I hope I can be better at really kind of capturing how it was at that time. And I've got some stuff coming out that I was telling you earlier. I just discovered some things that graphically will describe in my own voice how I used to think back then, that will be coming out as part of the production. And that I think will be very powerful to kind of hear how I speak about something now, how I've tried over the years to relay what it was like back then, but when you actually hear it in my own voice and others at that time, I think you'll get the idea. Like,
Right.
this is what a cult's like, and this is what cultic thinking is like, and this is how you behave when you're really in a brainwashed environment.
Well, let me ask you, are you allowed to share about, in general, what you're working on? Not with names?
Not yet, no.
Well, we
no.
can say it's something great and
It's something-
big
it's
that
on-
you all will see.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's good. Let's hope so.
I don't think it's hopefully. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
so
with the
we'll
people
see.
on your team, it's
Yeah.
going to be seen.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay, your question.
Okay.
All right. So, what's your favorite part of season 1? That's
Favorite part?
That's not an easy question.
No,
to
it
answer.
actually is. Favorite part of season 1 was being pleasantly surprised at how much people embraced what we were doing. In the sense of people saying, and I didn't get their permission, so I'm not going to use their names, but people saying and emailing me or messaging or commenting, saying, wow, let me tell you my story. Let me tell you what happened. I really resonated with X, Y, and Z. I feel safe to tell you this. So I think being a safe place,
Yeah.
hands down, favorite part. Safe place, bring it on.
Right.
I'm a mess. Sometimes Hoyt is a mess.
More-
I'm
more
usually a
times than
mess,
not.
and
More
that's
times than
okay.
not.
I
Yeah.
embrace the messiness. It's
Yeah.
who I am. So we just welcome that, love that.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is we're all human. And we're all having a human experience, and we all got really fucked up with something.
Sure.
And now we're talking about it. And coming out on the other side with a voice and a story to tell, I just don't know if there's anything more beautiful than that.
No,
You know?
I agree.
don't.
It's been an absolute treasure to
Honor, treasure,
yeah,
pleasure,
yeah.
everything.
And I'm looking forward to the people that will kind of come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And will reach out to us, and we'll be like, oh yeah, we'd love to hear your story.
Absolutely.
And so we're waiting for you out there. We're
Yeah.
waiting. Come and join the curriculum and this wonderful forum we have to just
Tell your story.
tell your story.
Be who you are. Yeah.
It's cool to talk about your cultic story.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Well, it shows that not only are you a survivor, but again, you've made it to the other side.
Yeah.
And that is just such a
Well, as we say, victim to survivor to
thriver.
Yeah.
Victim to survivor to thriver. That's who we are.
Yeah.
Okay, Hoyt's last question. Hoyt, you can decline to answer this question. This might be a TBD question.
Okay, all right.
You can decline, and then we're going to wrap it up after
Right.
this.
Okay.
So, Hoyt, this was a real question.
Okay.
Are you dating anyone?
Oh my God.
Several people have inquired, but which I might add, I never get those inquiries, so I don't know what's happening here. I am single.
No.
Hoyt, you can decline. You can respectfully decline.
I will say I am very, very grateful that love is in my life.
Okay. Oh God, that's such a good answer.
And I can say for a long time, I think it's probably part of how I was brought up, and certainly part of the cult. There was a huge record playing in my head that I didn't deserve that.
You didn't deserve love?
Yeah, and now
Interesting.
I'm experiencing that I think I do. And I'm very grateful for that.
That
So-
might be just the best way to answer that
Yeah.
question ever.
So
I love it.
I'm in the love vibe, and I'm couldn't be more grateful and thankful. Yeah.
God, I love that.
So
What a great way to end. Thank you, people that have sent in questions that
That's
just,
great.
provided the framework for
Yeah.
our whole episode. All right, guys. I'm going to end out with our quote.
season 2's coming around the corner.
Okay, season 2, the guests that we have
Oh my God.
are rock star, amazing. A couple of them have never been on a podcast.
Yeah.
Right? I love it. I love it. I love it. So
some of them have been on many and just have like wealths of information.
as they
to
should
share.
be on many. Yeah.
It's just incredible.
It's definitely a great mix of people that we have.
Yeah.
So we launched season 2 May 31st. Happy summer. It's our
Yeah.
summer episode.
Nice.
All
That's
right.
my mother's birthday.
May 31st?
Yeah. Gemini.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I've ever known a Gemini in my whole life.
Yeah. My mother. Yeah.
All right.
So-
My glasses are coming on.
And Brooke Shields.
On May 31st?
Yeah, it's one of the things I always, Brooke and I went to college together, and I always remember her birthday the same as my mom.
Really?
Yeah.
You know who has the same birthday as me? Jessica Simpson. And
Oh,
surprisingly, people have always told us that we're alike.
Oh, cool.
A little bit crazy, a little bit.
Yeah, there's. I'm sure there's something to astrology. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not banking it like the way I did back in the cultic.
Yeah.
But there's something.
I think there's a framework there
Yeah.
that there's tendencies.
Yeah.
I think there's tendencies with the time that you were born.
Okay, back
All
to the
right.
quote.
We're gonna finish out. Reread the quote of the day. Shame shifting is where a survivor of abuse is deemed to be the problem for not forgiving the abuser. This is only further emotional and psychological abuse. Ignore such people. And that's by Lily Hope Lusario. And might I underscore, ignore such people.
Yeah.
Right? Does you no good. Okay, guys. As we talked about in season 1 about guarding your hearts, right? Going forward in your life, we're going to keep preaching that message. We need to guard our hearts and our minds because nobody should have control of those except you. We're so grateful that you're on this journey with us. I love Hoyt. I love all you guys.
Joe.
We're so excited
Thank you,
about
everybody.
season 2, and we'll see you next time. Bye.